is The Trend, where you get enlightened perspective of trending news and topics with amazing commentary. I am your host, RTL Faith. Welcome to the podcast. If you're watching or listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure to rate us 5 stars. And make sure you visit the website so you can interact with me, get some more information, check out some of the videos at www.thetrendwithrtlfaith.com. I appreciate you. Got a lot of interesting topics, as always, to cover, and the intricacies that we are going to dive into, of course. We're going to be talking about the anime known as Ranking of Kings. The reason why I want to talk about it is very simple. Not only was it an excellent anime, 23 episodes, but the message behind the anime is something I need you all to hear, and you will be blown away. Well, not only what the story's about, but what it could actually do in terms of meaning for each and every one of you listening to this podcast. We're also going to be talking about some politics and politicians, referring to the senator that was twerking for votes. Jesus Christ. Where are we going in terms of the political spectrum? And of course, the most recent act that went into the legislative branch with the House of Representatives and the Senate with the same-sex marriage act. We'll give my personal thoughts and some of the facts that have been left out in regards to what is going on there. And then I want to wrap it up eventually talking about the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, and I haven't officially talked about it in my own personal thoughts in regards to it, some of the names that may be on the list that you may not be thinking about, and why the media is not covering it. What does that mean? It's corruption. You feel me? But before we go into some of that more dire news, because when it comes down to trending news, it tends to be dire and depressing, we got our positivity segment. If you are a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, you're gonna love this segment because it has been announced that the first feature-length film of the Avatar studios, you know, the stuff with Aang, the stuff with Katara, the stuff with Sokka, Zuko, and all that great stuff, fire, air, water, earth, fire. The first feature-length film would revolve around Avatar, Aang, and his friends. So don't worry. You don't gotta worry about Korra. Now, I heard Korra was pretty decent. I just couldn't watch it. I thought it was kind of corny, personally. But that's just me. So, a lot of hype in regards to it. Apparently, there's some rumors that it may be Avatar Aang while he's already an adult. So, it's kind of like a time skip situation. Think of like after the Naruto stuff and then a movie after he became, older. Very excited to see Avatar Aang and the rest of the crew being older, see what they bring out, see some of their characters again. Super interesting. So, with that said, let's dive into the podcast and talk about some of this trending news. First things first, I want to talk about the same-sex marriage stuff. If you guys are not familiar, there's stuff regarding a same-sex marriage act that was put in for voting in terms of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Now, it did go past, but a lot of people, the reason why people are kind of upset about it is because there's a handful of people that tried to decline the bill of being passed. Now, the official name of the bill is it's called like HR 404. And let me read you the details because I had to look up the exact details. And this was introduced to the House July 18th. So I'm going to read you the details and some of the other information regarding it, because if you didn't know, by the way, in terms of these bills and all this stuff, all this information is absolutely accessible to the public. It's just a lot of people are too lazy to look it up and all that stuff, but that's fine. That's what the podcast is for. I'll look it up and I'll kind of see what's going on. So this information is accessible. You can read what the bill is. You can read who voted for the bill and who denied the bill, right? So this bill was introduced July 18th, only 4 days ago. And it had here's the details regarding it, first and foremost. I'm going to read it to you verbatim so I'm not kind of misinterpreting what it is, right? This bill provides statutory authority for same-sex and interracial marriages. Specifically, the bill repeals and replaces provisions that define, for purpose of federal law, marriage as between a man and a woman, and spouse as a person of the opposite sex, with provisions that recognize any marriage that is valid under state law. The Supreme Court held that the current provisions were unconstitutional in United States v. Windsor in 2013. The bill also repeals and replaces provisions that do not require states to recognize same sex marriages from other states with provisions that prohibit the denial of full faith and credit or any right or claim relating to out of state marriages on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, or national origin. The Supreme Court held that the state laws barring same sex marriages were unconstitutional in Obergefell v. Hodges in 2015. The court held that state laws barring interracial marriages were unconstitutional in Loving v. Virginia in 1967. The bill allows the Department of Justice to bring civil action and establish a private right of action for violations. In layman terms, this law was passed to protect the right of same-sex marriage and interracial marriages. Now, the reason why this law was implemented in the first place is obviously as a result of Roe v. Wade and some concerns that eventually they're going to tackle other laws that were passed that may not necessarily be protected by the constitutional, but it basically is the idea to some Republicans is that the federal government and the Supreme Court were given powers that were beyond their intended scope based off the Constitution, which is why, in terms of abortion, Roe v. Wade was not necessarily a protected right in the Constitution, and the states should be given full access and rights to protect or to decide whether they support or deny abortion. Now, I personally have already talked about in length about Roe v. Wade, its implementation being kind of weird, the truth behind it in its entirety. Now, I do agree with the idea that if it's a serious circumstance, these people should not be criminalized for it. Like, if it revolves around the R word, if it revolves around incest and all that stuff, that should be exceptions to the rule, and I will stand by that as long as I live. I also am an individual that, even though I recognize abortion is murder in terms of a baby, and I think people are trying to deny it isn't murder to make themselves feel better, regardless, as long as you recognize it, then do what you want. I actually don't care what you do with your body. Personally, I have no interest of caring. But I just want the recognition to realize what you're doing, and if you're doing it consistently, that just kind of frames what type of person you are. It is what it is, right? So with that said, it passed. It was like, okay, they gave the power to the state. It's not permanently, forbidden or whatever. But now, because of Clarence Thomas and some of his things that he said after it kind of got repealed, he talked about we should look into some of the other cases. Some of these other cases, well, one of them being the Obergefell one regarding same-sex marriage. Now, him and some people around him indicated that, okay, he wasn't necessarily talking about repealing it like with the Roe v. Wade situation. Matter of fact, more people than not on the Supreme Court itself indicated that, yeah, we're not going to touch that in the first place. Like, I don't know why you think that if that's Clarence Thomas's thing, then that's his thing. We're not going to be doing any of that anytime soon. We have no interest in touching those laws. So most people on the Supreme Court have no interest touching those laws. And when it came to this bill being passed, like I said, most people were upset that it wasn't unanimous, because I think it was 200 to 117 or something like that. 200 something to 100 something for, and people are mad that some representatives denied it. And matter of fact, all the Democrats was like, yeah, right. A good number of Republicans were also yeah, and then the rest of them were nay. No, so this is not a unilateral thing in terms of Republicans either. So you can't just come at all Republicans and say, "Oh, you did not all Republican representatives voted against this act in the first place." So it raised a very interesting thing. Also, it indicated in a lot of these situations, like I said, a good number of Republicans was like, "Yeah, I don't know why we're touching this in the first place." A lot of Republicans were like, "Yeah, I have no interest in attacking same-sex marriage or interracial marriage at all." So there's more people than not saying, "Yeah, we don't plan to do anything like that. This is completely different from abortion." And in terms of the innate senses of morality, in terms of, a baby getting killed or not, the situation's a bit different. Now, you may argue that, okay, the Bible says this about same-sex marriage and whatever, so maybe that is why. Then at that point, it's like, okay, that's someone that is deep in the Bible would have to explain to you. That's their own prerogative. I personally am not religious, so I don't really care. As for the interracial thing, I think that has been clear from all the reports and all the statements. They have absolutely no intention of touching interracial marriage, and they state that they're not going to do anything to the same-sex marriage stuff. So it doesn't seem like anything's going to happen to it. Now, I don't know why people would vote against it, but some people are embedded in a institution for whatever specific state that they're absolutely religious. They have very religious and traditional values, so they'll never truly accept same-sex marriage. Period. I'm person like, yo, if they want to get married, let them get married. If they are the same sex, let them get married. Right? It is what it is. Now, I always have to give the devil's advocate point, whether you want to hear it or not. I will state that we do need to create a fine line before it gets ridiculous, right? Because I'm a big person in terms of precedent. We need to make sure we're setting a necessary precedent for future generations to follow. Because the moment we go into a state of precedent that has no legitimate backing, with backing, especially institutional backing that is grounded and concrete, especially if it doesn't have like especially making sure it at least has some type of scientific explanation or some logical background that makes it kind of viable. If we don't have something like that, then it becomes very loose. It becomes very flexible. So what I mean by, in terms of we should find a fine line in terms of like certain things, well, let's use the example of marriage. Marriage, I don't care if you're an adult, marry another adult. I don't care. Now, when it starts being weird is when people are like, okay, I want to marry a kid, right? I want to marry a 15-year-old, 14-year-old. It's like, hey, let me do what I want. See, that's when we get into some weird territory because we're America. We ain't some of these other countries. We have our values and we're sticking to them. Especially, another example, people want to marry animals. We want to marry their pet llama. Like, come on. What are we doing here? Come on, bruh. So at that point, we're entering in a state of ridiculousness. And I don't think we should enter into a phase like that. So as long as we have established precedent, established a line on where these things follow is what's important. Now, another way to perceive everything, I already gave my opinion on it, but I'm giving another perspective so you guys can think about it, is the idea that the Supreme Court and the federal government shouldn't have power and authority over state government decisions, right? The idea is that there are certain things that is not embedded innately in the Constitution, and if that is the case, state government should be given the full privilege on how they need or how they want to run their own state. Now, I thought of this in length in terms of like how the United States operates compared to other countries. And I think something that would be an interesting thought project for some of you guys out there is imagine the United States of America, but instead of calling things a country and a state, imagine thinking of it like this. The United States was a continent, and each state was their own country. Because in reality, when it comes to the United States of America, it's absolutely huge. People don't realize how big this country actually is, with a good number of our states being larger than a good number of countries in other worlds. And those countries have absolute autonomy to run as they please. So I'm asking you to think about this personally. Do you think it would be a better idea for the federal government to have, like, some national ways to run the state, national ideals and values that are innate in terms of human rights, and then obviously a common theme and culture, but in terms of self-running, self-governance, that should be absolutely state-driven. Think of it like the EU, for example. The United States would be like the European Union, but all the states individually are their own state. They can do whatever they want in terms of, as a state government, in terms of running how they want to run their state government. It's like they're their own country, so to speak. In terms of efficiency, in terms of running as a country, in terms of getting stuff done, like, these states have absolute autonomy, basically, with the United States federal government being there and going like, do not cross this line, but do what you got to do. Would that be better overall? I've thought about this in length after this Roe v. Wade situation, because that was the entire premise of why this was passed in the first place, is so the state governments can have their own say. And if you don't want to live in that state, you can move somewhere else. You have the absolute freedom. The border is not that far. But would that be a better way to run the country or a worse way? I'm not sure. I have no idea. I probably would have to look into that in length, but I'm curious in terms of your own personal opinion regarding the matter. So let me know what you guys think. If you're watching this on YouTube, let me know in the comments. Or if you're watching this or listen to this on the podcast, feel free to either rate it and comment, or go to the website and send a comment so I can check it out. So that is our first segment. A lot of political speech, but we're going to dive into more political speech real quick, because we're going to dive into the senator twerking for votes. If you guys don't know, a senator known as Tiara Mack, who's a Rhode Island lawmaker, went on TikTok and started shaking that booty. Yeah. Now, if I'm being completely honest, Tiara Mack is actually an attractive woman. Like, let's keep it a buck. She was in shape. She was attractive. But she twerked, not for fun or anything. She twerked for votes. We reached the stage of depravity to the point where we're twerking for votes. Might as well go to every corner of the streets, get on your knees and start glocking at that point, right? Because, like, at what point is it not enough? We've accepted so many things. People are like pro sex work, pro OnlyFans, pro being naked on social media, showing it to kids, pro taking kids to drag shows in a obviously very sexual environment. Matter of fact, this person, Tiara Mack, was trying to pass a bill in Rhode Island. I'm going to tell you her exact words. She wanted to pass a sex education course, a bill in Rhode Island public schools. So, keep in mind, I didn't say any specific type of schools. I said public schools in general. So that could be from pre-K to 12th grade. No cap. This is her exact words on what the course will cover. Affirmatively recognize pleasure-based sexual relations. She also added in different sexual orientations and being inclusive of same-sex relationships. Are you serious? We teaching that to kids? At what point Is it not enough? That's why, for me personally, I'm in the camp and thinking that there is no way in heck I'm taking my kid to a public school. I've been to public school. It's inefficient, doesn't really teach you anything long lasting, doesn't really help you get to college. And unless you are one of like the popular kids, on top ish on the food chain, or play sports or something like that, it's draining in terms of socially without having any friends. Now, fortunately, I did have friends. I was in a very strong part of the social hierarchy. Eventually, I distanced myself when I went to a phase of trying to find out who I want to be. So I never struggled socially at all. I'm kind of a loner too, so I never really struggled socially. But there's still, I know a lot of people who do. So public school is very inefficient, and then we're teaching stuff like this, and it's like, what the heck? Now, I did introduce the idea prior in terms of should states be absolutely autonomous. And if Rhode Island wants to run this way, let them rock. I just won't live in Rhode Island. You feel me? I just won't. But it's kind of crazy considering that she wants to do all this very weird and sexual stuff, thinking that this is going to be a benefit for kids as they grow up. What do kids need to learn about pleasure-based sexual relations? Why do kids need to learn that? I told the story in a prior podcast. Back when I was in middle school, I knew people having sex. It wasn't a good thing because the people who were having sex were also getting pregnant. And getting pregnant in middle school is insane because the moment you get pregnant, no matter what age you are, your life takes a completely different trajectory. And that's a fact. And if you don't have the resources to really keep things consistent, it will be a roller coaster. And another aspect of it is we know that a lot of very damaging things can happen to a kid that grows up in an unstable home, especially if he doesn't have a father, which a large majority of kids are growing up without both parents in the home. So this is just leading into not helping any of the problems we have currently. You want to teach kids more about sex. You want to make them more confused in school about sexual identity. You want to make them more confused about who they are. We have become such an inclusive country. Saying anything negative about being gay or any of that stuff is frowned upon. So what do we need more courses for? Society's teaching everybody to accept you for who you are once you become an adult. I still stand by that. You can be whoever you want once you become an adult. When you're not an adult, you learn the values that your parents are teaching you. That's period. You feel me? Obviously, some exceptions with some extreme ideals, whatever. But you know what I'm trying to say. So, it is crazy how unproductive this actually is. Like, Tara Mack, she's super woke. She's a black woman. She's part of the LGBT community. She's saying, hey, man, they trying to shut me down because I'm a black woman and I'm gay. Basically is what she's trying to say. And I'm like, yo, you must have not heard what you put in your own bill. Like, what are we talking about? You feel me? You're twerking for votes. Like, what are we talking about right now? Twerking for votes? Because you know what you're doing. You're leading into the depravity of people on the internet, and a lot of them are also very young, and they're going like this. It's like, oh, man, is that how our politicians are acting? Hey, man, I already knew twerking was a accepted mannerism nowadays. So now I know it's accepted in the professional environments as well. We'll see how well that works out going forward. Imagine, it was a thought, right? Kanye West wanted to become president. And the thought is Kanye is going to become president, and our first lady will be a former porn star. I mean, they're divorced now, so that's really not a thing. But it's just crazy that something like that could actually be the case one day in the future. Kind of insane. Another funny thing is Senator Jonathan Acosta tried to protect Tierra, saying, "It's public that I'm out here casually drinking, smoking weed, and spending as much time shirtless as the summer sun will allow. It's not an issue because I have a penis." Bro, these are politicians and they act so stupid. Like, that's not even a point. The point for her is, one, her bill wants kids to learn about sexual pleasure, and two, she's twerking, doing sexual explicit acts for votes. We already knew people did that for clout, but now we're doing them for votes? Like, come on. Unless you're going out here wigging your ding dong all over the place saying, "Vote for me," you have no ground to stand on, Acosta. How ignorant can people be? Like, come on now. They're not the same thing. So, yeah, those are my thoughts about Senator Tierra Mack working for votes. Go you. It's kind of crazy. All right, so let's dive into something a little bit more uplifting. And I said I was going to talk about it, and it's an anime called Ranking of Kings. Ranking of Kings is absolutely spectacular. 23 episodes. And I'm going to tell you the premise. If you guys want to skip forward so you don't want to get spoiled on the story of Ranking of Kings, by all means go ahead. Or maybe this will inspire you to watch the anime, which you can also do, of course. So, the anime of Ranking of Kings follows the story of a kid named Boji. Now, in this society, it's more of like a fantasy world for the most part. We have kingdoms, we have ogres, we have giants, stuff like that. We have demons, stuff like that, right? Now, in this world, you can become a king, and the idea behind this world is becoming the best king out of all kings. That's why it's called Ranking of Kings, right? And Boji, who is the prince of a king, who's kind of pronounced the strongest king, wants to be the greatest king of all time. But there's a catch. Now, normally with the catch, these shonen series where the guy wants to be the Hokage, wizard, pirate, ultimate hero, king, normally with stuff like this, it's like, oh, they don't have the power, or, oh, they have never been in this world before, or, oh, they just have strong ambition, but everybody's against them. Stuff like that, right? Boji wants to be the greatest king, and he's deaf in the ears and mute. What does that mean? He can't talk, and he can't hear. Not only that, you thought that was it? You thought that was it? There's a curse put upon him. His dad is a king. His dad is a giant. His dad got in some shady dealings. I'm not going to reveal the whole plot, but his dad got in some shady dealings that involved Boji getting cursed at birth. And because of that, not only is he deaf, not only is he mute, but he's not able to become stronger in the muscles. His body is physically unable to become stronger. He can barely lift a stone. This guy was only his disadvantages, with people looking at him and insulting him, calling him names and all that stuff. This guy wants to be the greatest king of all time. Now you hear this whole thing regarding Boji, and you're like, how the heck does he rise himself out of where he's at? Well, the thing about Boji is he's filled with absolute kindness. Boji feels like a very realistic character if he's like obviously a very kind person. One thing that I've preached multiple times on this podcast is the difference between being nice and being kind. I think people are so filled with negativity and hate. I mean, there's a whole party trying to demonize other people who disagree with their political values and their ideals. Whereas Boji doesn't really care about any of that. But he wants to be the greatest king. And that's probably a legacy thing or something that was embedded to him by his father. But despite being ridiculed, teased, and people telling him he can't do it, keep in mind also that people learn sign language to communicate with Boji, of course, but eventually he learned the skill to read lips. So he was able to see people's lips saying that he wasn't good enough. He sucked. He was a horrible excuse for a prince. He would never be the king. Matter of fact, he had a brother who was much stronger and much more talented because obviously he wasn't inflicted by the curse. And people were trying to adhere him to the kingship. There was a moment where Boji was announced to be the next king, and the people closest to him decided to make his brother the king instead because they didn't believe Boji was good enough. It was very interesting because despite all this, Boji kept on going on. Matter of fact, he became friends with a character who was outcasted by his entire society. He was the last people of his kind. He became a criminal because he outcasted everybody. But after he made Boji, he realized Boji is the hope that he has never had and became friends with him. Boji became a symbol of the story of ranking of kings, of hope and kindness that was very valuable throughout the entire thing. Because the story arcs of multiple characters in the story was filled with such negativity, such dire circumstances that was a lot of the times out of their control. And it was similar with Boji, but instead of what happened with them, a lot of them turning to doing very negative things, whether it's killing and or worse, Boji took all the negativity, put it on his back, and decided to move forward. Now, he was still very human, and he has cried, he's felt down, and he's felt depressed multiple times throughout the entire series. But fortunately, because of his friends and some people close to him, that he was continuously trying to get back up and proceed further. Now, I don't want to kind of spoil the entire anime for you because I want you guys to check it out. It's very interesting. It's a very good anime. But the reason why I appreciate it is because the ideals and the themes in the series itself is very reminiscent of how people should be acting today in society. All of the negative things that happen to a lot of people result in, further negativity. If you haven't heard me talk about it, there is a cycle of hatred and violence that has been going on for a very long time. You hate someone because of their political affiliation. You hate someone because of the color of their skin. You hate someone because of their ideals and values. They're going to teach the kid that you are that person that hated them for these reasons, and they're going to hate you for the exact opposite but same reasons. And it's going to perpetuate a cycle of hatred that never gets resolved or rectified. I'm sure if you guys haven't heard, there's a documentary of this black individual, and his mission, his goal, was trying to understand people who were on the far hate, fascist, very prejudiced groups and try to understand them. Not convert them, understand them. And what he did was absolutely insane. He got an interview with a member of the KKK. No, a leader of the KKK. I think he's called like a dragon or something. In a whole interview, they hit it off. They talked like daily, weekly. Eventually, after really understanding who this is, this black dude went to KKK rallies. Not to support their cause, but to understand what they're preaching. And eventually, after some time, this guy stepped down from being part of the KKK completely. After becoming friends with this black individual. And all it took is someone to talk to the other person. I'm not saying you have to spend every waking day to try to convert them, but at least it just takes one time, one opportunity to talk, to discuss, to have a conversation, to try to understand. Because at the end of the day, you hating, you demonizing someone else, you perpetuating the cycle of violence and the cycle of hatred won't solve anything. We saw what Pain did in Naruto. And if Naruto decided to go full demon mode, he wouldn't have solved anything. At the end of the day, it takes one person. Another popular example, think of the Andrew Tate XQC situation. They had a stream not too long ago where XQC was widely negative, opposed all his views, didn't even try to understand Andrew Tate's point of view. And after thinking, after some advice, after some not solicitation, but some people kind of talking to him, they had another one. Although he disagreed, he tried to understand much more, and he breeds a certain relationship. Although I don't know if they're friends, it's respect. Respect. Now, respect is not given; it is earned. And to me, what matters more so than some values and ideals you may have is who you are as a person. That's why I don't affiliate with other movements, groups, organizations, and ideals or values. I have my own opinion because it's beyond all that. It's beyond how you look, and it's beyond your your origins, so to speak. It's who you are. Because at the end of the day, what makes you is you. And no matter what affiliation or ideals you may have, you will always be the type of person you are. A person who preaches wokeness and woke mentality and goes out their way to beat up and bully people of a different spectrum, beats up and bullies people who are of white origin or who are male on a daily basis, despite their justifiable moral values, it shows that you are not a good person. You could even argue, or another example right here. The reason why I'm giving an example is because I'm trying to shape it out based on how media narrative points it out. Usually the woke person's the morally good person, right? And then you can say for the same thing, a conservative, Christian, full traditional values, does not believe in the LGBT community, to spend every waking day going to help the poor, going to help unprivileged kids, be donating to charity, could be having discussions with other people who he disagrees with but respects. That person is far more of a good person despite his values being not on the popular side in terms of mainstream ideals. Ranking of Kings has taught me the value of work ethic and most of all kindness and respect. Despite everything Boji went through in his life, he earned that respect. He became a beacon of hope and a beacon of kindness to everybody around him, even though every single one of them doubted him. But he pushed forward. Now it's hard, it's tough, it's difficult. Not everything is an anime. But even if you can't be the person that breaks the cycle of toxic demonization, you can be someone who supports someone who is trying to be that type of person. Because another valuable thing in the Ranking of Kings anime is the friend that he met at the beginning of the anime who was ostracized by society. He supported Boji unconditionally throughout the entire anime. And without that unconditional support and utter, friendship and love for Boji as a friend, without that, Boji wouldn't have made it. So even if you can't be that person who, for some reason, cannot break that cycle of negativity, you can support someone who tries or who can. And even though you're not being the one initiating, through that person that you're supporting and respecting, you start to open your eyes because they become the beacon, and then your mindset changes and you can spread it to other people. That's how movements are founded. That's how people like Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi were able to break a cycle of negativity, of toxicity, of hatred through peaceful and inspiring means. And that's another discussion. The amount of people who are trying to downplay, who are trying to demonize Gandhi and Martin Luther King are ridiculous. Not everybody's perfect, but to dismay what they've done in society is crazy. Crazy. So yeah, I just wanted to give like a heartwarming, philosophical, maybe inspiring a little monologue in terms of ranking of kings. I also plan to do a lot more monologues, like 30-minute monologues on my YouTube channel. While I play like have like Minecraft played in the background because I'm thinking of start playing Minecraft again or any other video game. I think it'll be a little therapeutic for some of you guys to hear my innermost thoughts. Even though you may disagree with me, there's a lot of things stirring in my brain that I want to release. So that's just me personally. All right, so we're gonna round it out by talking about something that is a lot less positive and inspirational, and that is in reference to Jeffrey Epstein, the infamous and scumbag of the earth, one of those people that I deem not a good person. You feel me? Now, Jeffrey Epstein has been caught and supposedly committed suicide. Now, there's a lot of speculation that people silenced him and for a good reason. If you don't know who Jeffrey Epstein is, one, you're living under a rock, but let me help you out. Jeffrey Epstein is a very successful individual. He started out as a math teacher, became a millionaire, started out his own business. Now, what made Jeffrey Epstein a horrible person is because he was committed to being an absolute scumbag. He was running a sex trafficking island where he would bring underage girls and do despicable sexual acts towards them. He would get people to bring girls to him like some recruiting shit. It was despicable. It was deplorable. And he got caught, he went to jail, and he supposedly committed suicide. Now, the story is not over. The reason why the story is not over is because he knew a lot of very important people. He knew a lot of very important people, ladies and gentlemen. Now, there is a lot of names, and keep in mind, this is just the flight log list, so that doesn't necessarily mean all these people were part of his deplorable actions on the pedophile island, and it doesn't mean all these people were on his island in the first place. Now, there are some people that have been somewhat confirmed, but some names to kind of point out that is kind of surprising. So these are all the people that were on his Epstein flight log. So these are people that were confirmed on his jet at some point. People like Alec Baldwin, Anderson Cooper, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, my brother, Ben Affleck, Brian Affleck, Bill Murray, Dan Schneider. He's a scumbag anyway. It don't even matter. Gwen Stefani, James Gunn, Jimmy Kimmel, Jim Carrey, obviously Jeffrey Epstein, John Legend, John Cusack, Katy Perry, Kevin Spacey, Meryl Streep, Madonna. That's just tough. Quentin Tarantino, Pharrell, Oprah. That's tough. Michelle Wolf, Robert Downey Jr. My God, Seth Green, Stefani, Tom Hanks, Will Ferrell, Will Smith, Woody Allen. So these are all people that are on his jet. Again, this doesn't mean that they're connected to the pedophile island, and it does not mean that they were part of the deplorable actions, right? Now, there's another list that apparently that is in the possession of like the government, the FBI, whatnot, known as the client list. Now, what makes this list a lot more damning is these are the clients that was actually, and this footage could change everything. So what will happen, I'm not sure, but I just want to remind people of what is going on currently in our landscape. So that's all the news we got for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Obviously, tune in for every Tuesday where I release my guest interview episodes, which is, more of a 1v1 conversation. Hope you guys enjoy your day. Rate it 5 stars as I said. Visit the website www.thetrendwithrtlfaith.com. Y'all have a good one. Take care and peace.